From Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson with you, and here's what's coming up. K-State's A.J. Tarpoff is in today to discuss various approaches to heat abatement for cattle in the summertime. He'll offer ideas on feeding management to lighten that heat stress, and he'll talk about providing adequate access to water and shade for cattle, either in confinement or on grass. Also, the latest Farm Service Agency update. From the Kansas FSA, Josh Ritter will go over the particulars of the USDA's Guaranteed Loan Program, who can qualify, and the terms and other stipulations of those loans. And this being a Wednesday, K-State's Gus van Der Hoeven awaits with his weekly commentary on life in rural Kansas. All that here on Agriculture Today. You are tuned in to Agriculture Today. Welcome once more. Well, we're back now into the summer heat as of the last few days, and it brings to mind something that you cattle producers worry about. That is heat stress on your animals. We brought by once again beef veterinarian A.J. Tarpoff, K-State Research and Extension, to discuss heat stress mitigation for cattle. We have had cooler days leading up to the last few, AJ, but the fact of the matter is heat stress is inevitable, and it'll start shortly.
Year in and year out, we see the first, big blasts of high humidity, high heat, low wind speeds here in the early summer months, and it's prime conditions to really have some big impacts of heat stress, especially on our feedlot cattle, but also on pasture cattle. It usually happens here in, beginning parts of June is where we get that kind of first heat blast. And it's with recent rains and the higher humidity, which is obviously a blessing. It also sets up for some pretty big heat stress, potential heat stress episodes in the near future.
And to know how to protect one's stock from it, it's best to know how cattle accumulate heat and disperse heat, biologically speaking.
Yeah, so cattle, they're a robust animal. I mean, they live in all 50 states, and they can acclimate to just about any climate, any temperature, regardless of what it is. They just have that ability, which really makes them amazing. But heat stress is interesting. Cattle, they have the opportunity and the ability to accumulate heat the entire day. They have a very poor ability to dissipate heat. You may have heard that cattle don't sweat. Well, they actually do. They're just very inefficient at it. So it's not a very good cooling mechanism. So if it's the environmental temperatures, it starts to get above their what we refer to as thermoneutral. So anything that gets hotter, they start accumulating heat. And how they dissipate that heat is actually through evaporative cooling, similar to sweating, but it's actually through their breathing. It's through their respiratory tract. So as it heats up, they try to dissipate heat. Their blood kind of stays on the periphery and kind of holds that heat so they don't heat up their internal organs. And then they blow that heat out. Okay, so they stand, they drink, that increases demands for water. Obviously, they're trying to get more water in the system to be able to help dissipate and use that moisture to dissipate the heat out. So cattle accumulate the heat a couple of different ways. The main mechanism is, evaporative cooling through breathing and panning and increasing the respiratory rate. But there's more to how they accumulate heat and what conditions they actually accumulate more. The biggest factors with heat stress are temperature, humidity, which we recognize that, every day we look at the weather and we see those two things. But the other key factors are wind speed, solar radiation, nighttime cooling. Okay, all of these things really play into how much heat stress these animals are going to have. So those are the environmental factors, but there's also management factors. The heat of fermentation, okay, digestion. That's something that we don't normally think about. But cattle accumulate heat because they have to consume feed. The rumen microbes go through fermentation, and one of the things that's given off is actually heat. Okay, so we have to keep in mind when we feed them, the peak heat of digestion comes 4 to 6 hours later. So sometimes we can play into that. So we have environment, we have management, we have hair coat, body condition. All of these things go into play on how much heat these animals or heat stress these animals are going to have.
So back to the feeding management, like you say, timing is important. If one can feed and then allow them to hit that mark when it's cooler in the evening, that will allow them to disperse heat more efficiently.
Potentially. When we look at the periods of the day, if we start putting that on a management schedule, so to speak, cattle will accumulate heat on a hot day, and their internal temperature reaches a maximum a couple of hours after the environmental peak. Okay, so if we have the environmental peak at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, those animals will continue to accumulate heat for another couple hours before they start dissipating it. So the key with management is just trying to figure out that we're not building multiple stressors of heat load all at the same time. One of the common things that usually gets implemented is, one, if we can feed later in the evening hours where we can push that heat of fermentation, the heat of digestion later in the nighttime cooling hours, sometimes that can be helpful. It also helps that when cattle are more comfortable, they're not just sitting there trying to cool themselves, they're more prone to eat and they're more consistent at eating. The other thing with feed, since we're on that topic, is diet composition. So the more digestible a feedstuff, the less heat of fermentation it takes. Okay, so it's kind of opposite of what we talk about. We talk about hot rations. Well, those hot rations are high in starch, really digestible, a lot of energy. But there's not a whole lot of heat of fermentation because they're so digestible. So when we think about the heat of fermentation, it's feedstuffs like straw or prairie hay that was late cut, or CRP hay. So those very fibrous, very undigestible or less digestible feedstuffs, those actually create more heat. So our grains, our starches, our fats, even distiller grains and things like that, those have a lower level of heat of fermentation because they're so readily digestible.
So think about your feedstuff selection there, your composition. That can be managed accordingly to lift some of this stress. We think about other things that are fairly obvious, and that would be providing adequate water to the herd, either in confinement or out on grass.
And so water is critical. Cattle, as a general rule of thumb, during the fall, the spring, the winter months, they consume about 3 times per weight, 3 times dry matter intake. So that's kind of a good rule of thumb on how much water they need. Well, once it increases and we start getting into the summer months, all of a sudden we increase the water demand of that individual animal to 5 times dry matter intake. So to put that into, kind of understandable terms, is when the temperature goes from 70 to 90, it doubles the water demands of that animal. So that's where readily available, cool, clean access of high-quality water, that's a necessity. And this is a good time that especially folks that have automatic waterers, they may have winter levels and summer levels. And for the majority of folks around the state, they may still have those waterers at the winter levels to help protect from freezing. And if you haven't switched those over to increase the flow, to be able to increase the tank capacity here for the summer months, now is the time to do that.
One more thing, although there are other tactics that could be considered. Providing shade in whatever fashion. If you've cattle out on pasture, well, making sure they have access to trees, whatever it might be. If, again, in confinement, artificial shade can make a significant difference, you say.
So shade's a fantastic tool, and we're still learning more and more how to best utilize the shade. Shade structures, you can purchase them, you can build some structures, you can provide some temporary relief. Pasture animals, whether they have some draws or a couple of shade trees that they can get behind, there's a lot of options out there. My biggest recommendation, if you're going to utilize shade, is making sure that you have enough. Enough area per animal would be about the size of a 4x8 sheet of plywood, right? They need that much shade because we don't want cattle to pile on top of each other. If they group up in a shaded area, they're going to accumulate more heat, and it decreases the airflow, and then they won't be able to dissipate enough. So if you are going to provide shade, making sure that all animals have free access to it, where they do have that ability to get the comfort, but they can also dissipate heat.
Well, there are several key thoughts, but the point is, AJ, producers need to attend to this heat stress mitigation. It does take a little more effort, of course, but the payoff is very clear.
Yeah, the payoff is there. It's increasing the comfort. When we have comfortable animals, they perform for us, whatever their duties are, whether that's on grass cattle, cow-calf, lactation, or it's producing a pound of beef or, a gallon of milk. So increasing that comfort really goes a long way. One thing I'd like to leave listeners with at the end here is, how do we forecast? How do we plan ahead? If we're going to build a plan, how do we process on when these issues are going to occur? So I'd like to point out just a couple of really nice tools that are available out there that are free of use, but producers can utilize to help with planning ahead for forecasting heat stress events for cattle. The first of which would be the Kansas Mesonet. I know many producers use the Mesonet for soil surface and for planning, but there's also an animal comfort index. So if you can Google search Kansas Mesonet animal comfort, and it's a phenomenal tool. There's 65 observation locations all through the state, so you get a local reading. That local reading, you can see it's plugged in, taking into account temperature, humidity, wind speed, solar radiation. So we have a very good understanding on what the comfort level is for those animals. We can measure nighttime cooling with the Animal Comfort Index, which is great. The other tool for forecasting up to a week in advance. So here's where the forecast comes in. U.S. Meat Animal Research Center out of Clay Center, Nebraska, uses the same Animal Comfort Index, but then plugs it into the nationwide forecast. So now we can see several days in advance when we're going to have these episodes. We can implement and put our plan into place and get the crew on board. So U.S. Meat Animal Research, you can search heat stress. That'll bring you right to the page, and it's for all 50 states. Very useful tool. And then the Kansas Mesonet Animal Comfort Index.
Those are extremely helpful references to know what's coming and how to be ready for it, cattle producers. Timely thoughts, of course, AJ. Thank you for coming over once more.
Thank you.
On heat stress abatement for cattle in the summer, that's AJ Tarpoff, beef veterinarian, K-State Research and Extension. More for you shortly. This is Agriculture Today. Welcome back. You are tuned in to Agriculture Today and our periodic visit about what's happening in USDA programs here in Kansas via the Farm Service Agency. And we've invited back in the Farm Loan Chief with the FSA State Headquarters here in Kansas, Josh Ritter, with another glance to another aspect of the USDA's Farm Loan Program. Josh, thanks for being along with us. You have selected a specific phase of loan activity to discuss with us today, you say.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Eric. Yeah, today I'd like to talk about our guaranteed loan program. Unlike our direct loan programs, which we talked about before, where the loans are made and serviced by our agency, FSA guaranteed loans are made and serviced by commercial lenders, which would include banks, credit unions, and farm credit system institutions. With these loans, FSA guarantees up to 95% of the loss of principal and interest on a loan. And in a lot of cases, the FSA guarantee allows lenders to make ag loans to farmers who do not meet the lender's normal underwriting criteria.
So it's a good cooperative venture between lenders and the FSA through the loan program. The types of loans available under the guaranteed program, are they varied? What?
Sure, yeah. There are primarily two types of loans available under our guaranteed loan program. The first type are our guaranteed operating loans, which can be used to purchase livestock, farm equipment, feed, seed, fuel, and for other operating expenses. And those operating loan funds can also be used to refinance debt. The second type of loan available under the guaranteed loan program are farm ownership loans. And farm ownership loans are used to purchase farmland, construct or repair buildings and other fixtures, develop farmland to promote soil and water conservation, and also to refinance debt.
Of course, producers, when they hear about any kind of loan program, immediately want to know about the terms, the details. Fill us in on loan amounts allowed and so forth, if you would.
Yeah, there is a maximum loan amount under the guaranteed loan program. Currently, that limit is set at $1,825,000, and that amount is adjusted annually based on the rate of inflation. Loan terms vary according to the type of loan, the collateral securing the loan, and the producer's ability to repay. but the maximum loan term amount for any operating loan is going to be 7 years, and for a farm ownership loan, that maximum term will be 40 years. And then the interest rate is determined by the lender making the loan.
So they have the latitude, the lender, to make that work for all parties involved. You said that the FSA, Josh, can guarantee up to 95% of the loss on these loans should that occur. How is that percent of guarantee determined?
And I should clarify, for most loans, that maximum guarantee is going to be 90%, and that guarantee percentage will be determined by FSA based on the risk involved in the loan. In the instances where we can receive, or where a lender can receive a 95% guarantee, is when the purpose of the loan is to refinance a direct FSA farm loan, or the loan is made to a beginning farmer participating in FSA's down payment loan program, or the loan is made to a socially disadvantaged farmer participating in that same down payment loan program.
All right. Want to talk fees for a minute? Any such fees associated with guaranteed loans then?
Yeah, for most guaranteed loans, FSA does charge a fee, and that fee would be 1.5% of the guaranteed portion of the loan. This fee may be passed on to the borrower by the lender if they so choose. There are some circumstances where that fee can be waived, and they're kind of similar to what we just talked about before, but that fee's waived when the majority of the loan is to refinance a direct FSA farm loan, or the loan is being made to a beginning farmer participating in FSA's down payment loan program, or a loan being made to a socially disadvantaged farmer participating in that same down payment loan program.
And just to clarify here, who is responsible for managing the loan once it is closed, it is all squared away?
Sure, yeah. Guaranteed loans are the property and responsibility of the lender making the loan from the time of loan making through loan servicing until that loan is paid in full. So the lender is responsible for servicing their guaranteed loans in the same way they would service any other loan in their portfolio. The lender is also responsible for making sure the guaranteed loan complies with all FSA program requirements.
And not to ask this, maybe should have earlier, who can apply for an FSA guaranteed loan?
Sure, and first I should clarify that when the producers apply for a loan, they're going to apply with the lender they're choosing. Then that lender will work directly with FSA if the lender determines they want to pursue that FSA guarantee. The producer, however, does need to meet certain eligibility criteria to qualify for an FSA guaranteed loan. And this includes that the producer must be a U.S. citizen or legal resident alien. They need to have an acceptable credit history as determined by the lender. They need to demonstrate the ability to repay the loan and provide sufficient security for the loan. They also need to be the owner and or operator of a family farm after the loan is closed. And they also cannot be able to obtain a loan without that guarantee.
Well, that's a good outline on the guaranteed loan program. If a producer out there has further questions about it, you have more than one party involved in administering it. Whom should they contact then?
Yeah, that producer or lender, if they have any questions, they should reach out to their local FSA FLP office. And also, if a producer needs help finding a local lender that utilizes our guaranteed loan program, that local FLP office can provide them a list with eligible lenders in their area. The guaranteed loan program offers a great benefit to both the lender and the producer. For the lender, the program reduces their risk, which in turn makes it more likely that that lender will be able to approve a loan that would fall outside their normal underwriting criteria in a lot of cases. And if a lender can approve even more marginal loans with the help of this program, then that means more credit opportunities are open for our producer. So in my opinion, it truly is a win-win program for all the parties involved.
Very well. Do touch base with your local FSA folk to get the ball rolling on applying for such a loan. And we always appreciate the word, Josh. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
He is the Farm Loan Chief with the Kansas Farm Service Agency based in Manhattan. That's Josh Ritter. Well, taking us up to the break, this report from the USDA's Rod Bain, the process now underway to develop the 2023 Farm Bill with hopes of passage into law next year. Rod covers some of the discussions and the steps in creating that new Farm Bill. Rod?
A series of hearings with the House Agriculture Committee over the last 2 months signals the start of congressional consideration of a 2023 Farm Bill. The role of the Agriculture Department in crafting such legislation will be advisory, As Deputy Agriculture Secretary Jewel Branagh explains,
we are committed to leveraging our expertise and meaningful data to give feedback and better understanding about how our programs are working and where they aren't, and sharing where we may need additional flexibilities to better address the evolving and ever-changing needs and challenges across the country.
Several of those House Ag Committee hearings to date have included testimony from USDA officials on various aspects of the department and the respective titles within the Farm Bill.
FAS partners with more than 70 cooperative groups representing a cross-section of the U.S. food and agriculture industry and manages a toolkit of Farm Bill authorized trade promotion programs to help U.S. exporters develop and maintain markets for all of our products.
Foreign Agricultural Service Administrator Daniel Whitley talking about programs under the Farm Bill's trade title. In addition, several ag and food organizations have begun internal discussions of what they wish to see within a new Farm Bill. American Soybean Association President Brad Doyle and American Farm Bureau Federation President Zippy Duval described this process for their respective organizations.
Since early 2022, ASA has held 12 virtual Farm Bill listening sessions, both by region and by topic, with interested soybean farmers across soy's 30 primary growing states.
We have a Farm Bill working group now that will bring in representatives from all 50 states. We look at the current Farm Bill to see how it's performing, try to find what might need to be tweaked in it, and then we move forward in the policy arena.
And as both ag insiders and those outside the farm might expect, there has been discussion and testimony already about the commodity title of the Farm Bill and how various farm safety net programs should be shaped. This is Chris Edgington of the National Corn Growers Association.
NCGA has long advocated for market-oriented farm policies. Our focus continues on tools geared toward revenue, which factors in both yield and price risk that growers face. Agricultural risk county, ARC individual, and price loss coverage or PLC programs.
However, more citizens through concerted educational efforts are beginning to understand a farm bill is more than just farm programs. It contains titles covering areas such as energy, forestry, rural development, conservation, and nutrition. In fact, the nutrition title over the past several farm bills has contained the largest amount of funding, as it covers the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program and other domestic food assistance offerings. Farm and commodity organization leaders, like National Farmers Union President Rob LaRue, recognize the importance of this title for both Farm Bill programs and Farm Bill passage.
What we've seen over the course of several farm bills now is that if you don't have a strong nutrition title, it is next to impossible to get a farm bill through.
As Farm Bill development continues for what should be the 2023 edition, the legislation is expected to address issues and opportunities that have emerged since the last Farm Bill in 2018. And Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack believes as Congress develops the new Farm Bill for the wide range of beneficiaries through continued diversification.
The challenge will be to recognize the changes that are occurring, changes like the market demanding more sustainability and climate smart commodities, changes like how do we support that circular economy, how do we create a USDA and a Farm Bill that not only rewards productivity but also ensures profitability.
I'm Ron Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
And as the calendar turns and the process of crafting that next farm bill heats up, our good friends at K-State Agricultural Economics will be at the ready with analysis of the possibilities there. Looking forward to that. We'll return after these moments away. You're listening to the K-State Radio Network and Agriculture Today. This is Agriculture Today. Stop, look, and listen.
Passing deer and turkey and fox may wander.
That's Gus van Der Hoeven of Kansas State University with comment on life in rural Kansas.
The peonies are blooming. It must be Memorial Day. Of course, we call it Memorial Weekend, as we celebrate the special day over a 3-day period. The weatherman predicted a beautiful weekend. The sunny weather helped dry things up after the good rains we had. Yes, people had 3 days to celebrate. But Then again, can we really celebrate? Was it a beautiful weekend? Maybe the weather was good, dry and sunny, not too hot. Yes, windy. But how many of us know that officially the flag should be flown half-mast during the morning of Memorial Day? That is to remember the first meaning of Memorial Day. It's a somber and special day of remembrance of the soldiers, the men and women who have died during the wars. I read they died for our country. But they also died for my old country, the Netherlands, and many other countries. I have walked the war cemetery, Margraten, and Holten in the Netherlands, and Omaha Beach in France. I'm thinking of the small local cemetery near my hometown, where under the bending branches of trees is a row of 4 graves. A flight crew lays buried there, of an Allied bomber shot down. Early civilizations encouraged its citizens to never forget those who died in battle. It were the early Greek. The Civil War found North and South grieving, remembering. What made it special hard was that at times family fought family. People who attended those graves started to attend neglected graves of the other side. They laid down their flowers on both graves. I look at the photo of the grown and married son of a Canadian soldier, the son who was given the small notebook his father carried and was pierced by the German bullet, which instantly killed the father while advancing, liberating us. It was found and saved. It happened in our community. I know the exact spot. I quietly remember, and yes, at midday when flags are raised, full mast, then we can celebrate and be thankful. Even though we think of our military as we should, forgive me if I also in my mind slipped to a small hill at the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains near Ararat, Virginia. That is where Margaret, my sister, lays buried. It's a small, rural cemetery with magnificent view across the valley to the old, worn mountains. There are other graves I think of. My brother who left a wife and 3 small children. When I think of my parents, I smile. I admired my dad and mom, who managed to live graciously after their loss. Yes, they grieved. On Memorial Day, I walked to a special place on the farm and laid flowers, which are carefully selected. A wild bouquet with a few colorful peonies. Passing deer and turkey may wonder, but we know.
Gus van Der Hoeven of Kansas State University with his weekly commentary on life in rural Kansas. Our time's away once more. Thanks for tuning in. Eric Atkinson for Agriculture Today over the K-State Radio Network.